And we are live here for episode 6 of the Lucas Grandsire podcast. Like I always say, the most creative name in the podcast game. We have the one and only Dwight Grant joining me for episode 6, I believe live from quarantine. What's going on, sir? How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. How you doing?
I'm doing well. Before we get started, though, I mean, I'm sure the people are looking. They see Sacramento. It's like, oh, is Lucas from Sacramento? And the answer is no. And if if you're a fan, you should know I'm from France. So that gives me the freedom to wear whatever team stuff I want. It's like, I don't have any loyalty. It's like Sacramento if I feel like it. Charlotte Hornets, whomever. Gotta put that out there.
I feel you. I don't really follow sports too much, but when I do, I usually try to go for New York teams. And
Right.
now that I'm here in California, Southern California, I will represent a Southern California team every now and then.
Well, you got lucky too, especially with basketball, because you were what? You were born in Brooklyn, right? So the Brooklyn Nets are
Yeah,
finally good, so you can rep Brooklyn. If you're California, you can be like, the Lakers. Like you have all these choices,
yeah.
and nobody can get mad at you for it.
Hey, when I was in Northern California, like Golden State was killing it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So now I'm down here, and if the Lakers start doing good, I'm gonna have to start asking for a cut because that means I'm bringing the good luck.
Exactly, man. If we could convince you to move to Charlotte, North Carolina, help out the Hornets, just throwing it out there like that would be very clutch on your part.
Bringing the aura over there.
Right, exactly. It's like it would make headline news like the Charlotte Observer. It's like Dwight Grant moves, the team finally winning a championship, and it's like, yeah, that's how it works with Dwight.
That sounds like the beginning of a Disney movie, like
Oh, yeah.
some kind of good luck charm.
Right, it's like good luck charm, and you gotta you can do the over the shoulder, turn around, look at the camera, just with the cheesy title, Disney, starring Dwight Grant.
Sounds pretty good. Sounds pretty good.
Yeah, it sounds great. I mean, we're writing a movie, and if the producers have the idea, like you have to, at least cast my guy Dwight. I mean, I have to be somewhere. My name has to be somewhere. Like, we're
Yeah,
giving
man.
people good content.
At least on the storyboard, man. Like set it up. Set it up.
Right. Last time I had a fighter on the podcast, though, he did give me some comments about the lack of fight posters on the wall, and he was like,
Uh,
I'll send you a poster because we have tons of it. So now that I have another fighter on the podcast, I have to throw this out there, Dwight. If you want to take part in the, making the wall not look like shit with extra posters, please
mm,
feel free.
okay, I'll see what I can do here. Reach into the bag. Reach into the bag.
That's the begging segment. Do you guys have a lot of those posters? Like we always seen you sign a ton of them when you get to the fight, but do you have a bunch of them?
So we signed a bunch for sure. They give us a couple like after every fight, like So I have maybe like 12 or so, but I mean it's probably in storage. that's,
Oh yeah.
that's the only thing. That's the only thing. It's probably in storage.
Well, you think like you're gonna do something with them, like I'll hang them on the wall or maybe make something, and then in reality they sit in a box, and it's like, oh yeah, I guess I do have that.
No, I mean the thing is like we moved, so like like
Yeah.
I put everything away, and I do want to hang them up, especially maybe some of the cool ones. I fought on the UFC card where Adesanya fought, and he fought Gasolin. That's like a pretty cool looking poster. And some other ones that I really like. I want to like hang up. So I do want to hang them up, but just
Yeah.
in storage right now.
Did you get a chance to meet Israel, or did you kind of just see everybody from afar?
I mean, I met him a little bit for like a second. I walked by and I was like, "Hey, man, good luck and all stuff like that." But that's really it. Before fights, I try not to bother anybody.
Yeah.
like you know what I mean? Because like before I fight, like I'm cool. Like I'm not saying like I'm like super relaxed, but I'm pretty calm, whatever it is. And then I don't have a routine. But I know like over the years I met fighters who have certain routines. They don't want to shake hands with anybody new or strange. They don't want to like give a dap to anybody new or strange. I try to just be like, oh hey, and leave it alone. Try to be disrespectful, but try not to be like too invasive either. So try to walk that line right there. Yeah.
It's funny hearing a fighter say that because we always imagine you guys would be like, there's like a certain a brotherhood or something like that, right? Like you guys recognize each other and everybody's friends, but I mean, maybe not in this case.
No, I mean everybody's friends in the sense that we're all like coworkers at that point. You're at the fight meeting and stuff like that. But I just don't want to like knock anybody off their like their thing, because especially well now it's a little different. But when I first started fighting and stuff like that, and in the amateur scene, everyone was so tense in the back, like it was so tense, and I would be relaxed. But then I started feeling like I was too relaxed, and I was like being distracting, to people. So I don't want to like bother anybody. 'Cause if I can be fine in any environment, I don't need to affect other people's situations. So that's kind of like where I'm coming from with that. I'm like fresh out of fighting, in the basement of a church. So like I want to come out here and be like, hey, what's up, guys? Oh, what's up?
Oh, yeah,
Guys, like, all right, man, take it easy. I got to fight tomorrow.
right.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing too. Like when you get to the UFC, it's kind of like you hear all these rookies in other sports, right? They come in, they're like excited and stuff, and then you got the veterans, and act like you've been here before.
Yeah, exactly. I don't want to get admonished for, jovial behavior. This guy thinks he's going to a carnival. What's wrong with this guy? And then I'm like, oh, I'm sorry. I try to avoid that as much as possible. But if I do see somebody that that I met before, or, whatever it is, I try to be, hey, what's up? Hey, like I met Max Holloway before a fight. This dude was super cool. Like if I ever see him again, I'm like, hey, what's up? I already know he's a cool guy. So. That's about it.
Have you had any encounters like that where it's like we think they seem cool from a distance, and then even without giving any names, but anyone you've met and you're like, oh man, this guy, like this guy's he's a dick, quite frankly.
Yeah, for sure. I mean that's the thing. It's like you don't want to like idolize people too much. It's hard not to, because this is I mean it sounds kind of like self-congratulating for me to say, but it's a very inspirational sport. I got into MMA because I was watching like all these videos online of people from like Pride FC and UFC like winning fights and celebrating, and like them, the team carrying all kinds of fun, cool stuff. And I saw those people and I was like, man, that looks like so much fun. This is great. And then I met some of those people and I was like, oh snap. But it could be because they were fighting soon, or you never know what's going on. So you might meet them on a bad day. So I can't make like a good judgment on it.
Well, that's kind of your exchange as a fighter. I know for me as media, you have different guys. Like you try to watch media, sort of get a sense of who they are before you interview them for the first time. And a lot of guys are really cool. And then there's some where it's like you go into the interview like, all right, this is about to be a tough one. Like, he doesn't necessarily want to be there. Like we got to try and, do the best we can. And sometimes it's disappointing, but most guys are pretty cool.
Yeah, he asked somebody a question like, "Hey, so what's next for you? What's next? It's whoever's next." He's staring at the camera like, "Oh, well, take it easy, buddy."
Yeah, you got some of them that want to put on a character, or it's like they don't even listen to the question because they want to say whatever they want. You'll be like, "What do you think about this fight?" I think I'm gonna go out there and everyone's gonna remember him. It's like that's not what I asked.
And what's crazy about that? Especially at this point with social media and like all these things, like. You can see people trying, you know what I'm saying? Like you can see somebody putting in the effort. And it's nothing wrong, because some people like they would be nervous otherwise, like they would just be like a nervous mess, or just be like a quiet, and so they have to kind of get into character. I mean, I used to do theater, like when I was growing up and in college, stuff like that. And I would see people kind of getting into character before they step on stage, and especially like if their scene is right before mine, you see them and they step out, and I see that. I know it's crazy, but I see that in MMA, in kickboxing and all stuff like that. People are about to go out and they kind of step into the character, and I understand it, but I don't really understand it for interviews too much. But I can kind of get it, because they really want to show themselves to be a certain type of way, and they probably think their opponent is watching too, and they don't want to seem like weak, all kinds of things enter people's minds. So, I can't knock them for it too much.
The funny thing about the interview thing is I know like Colby Covington's a super obvious one. Like he always sets up, he's got the picture of Trump, some kind, he puts the belt.
Yeah.
I saw one time with like a red phone. I don't know what that was a reference to, but like and the funny thing about the media is if you put on a really obvious character, media guys make it a challenge to let's get him to, stop being in character. Let's bring out the human side. And you see tons of interviews with Colby where the interviewer, he's so concentrated on let's give him a break. Let's get the real Colby out there that the interview kind of, because they're trying to, uncover who's the real Colby, and it's like it won't work at this point.
Well, that's the metagame. You know what I mean? It's like them trying to bring the real Colby out and him put on the character is the game that's happening that becomes entertaining for the viewer. Some people love watching that like thing transpire, and then maybe he'll say something really, really cheesy or corny, or like what I mean, like oh man. And I have friends who like they'll be like, oh, I don't like that guy. But they watch all his interviews, and I'm like, well, you may not like him, but you enjoy his work. So it's like he's doing his job. He's doing his job.
Well, I know the one guy who can kind of get him to break character is like James Lynch, and that's because they've been doing interviews for so long that it's like I knew who you were before. You had the picture of Trump in the back, like so. It's like you sometimes forget, like, oh yeah, you have to put on this character, even though the interview, it's like he knows who you are. Like this isn't someone brand new.
They're just hoping that like they don't like rat them out. You know, like
Yeah.
don't tell anybody who I really am. You know, and just like go along with it, I guess. You know.
Or they saw on Reddit where Colby was doing like a Ask Me Anything. It wasn't that long ago. It was a few years ago, and he's like everything he's saying is like, I train my hardest. I respect my opponent. It was like, such a nice guy, and everybody's like, what happened? Like, how did we get from that to, ruining Star Wars movies for people?
Oh boy, I remember. I was so glad I missed that one, man.
Yeah.
Ooh, boy, I'm so glad I missed that. But I think the way you get to that is people, they understand the different aspects of entertainment. Like it's yeah, and I'm not like trying to like endorse this dude. I'm like, hey, this guy's a guy. It's just that yeah, I understand. Like some people are playing a certain game with fighting. Like I always fighting. I'm not just talking about like MMA, but it's like boxing, kickboxing, Muay Thai, and all that stuff like that. Some people are playing a game and they're playing a character, especially at the higher levels where like you can be more relaxed because you're not nervous about your skill level. You can fight at this point. So it's like whatever, and now you can focus on other things, other aspects of making the fight interesting, selling the fight, promoting the fight. What those people need to understand though is some people are not playing that game. Like some people like they come in a fight, and when you say something crazy, they're gonna take it really personally. And they might want to fight you for real. So you gotta be careful. Now it's we have security and all these things like that to kind of keep things keep things safe. But I mean, I think because it's such a big show and we have so much protection, people kind of forget that some people are not playing games. So I think it's cool to make those kind of jokes, but you got to be careful. At some point, you got to kind of like be like, okay, if me and this person were like standing somewhere, not even in the street, but like in a normal setting, would I go this far? Because this might be this might be seen as disrespectful to a level that warrants, some kind of retaliation. So you gotta be careful a little bit,
But would you be worried about that as a fighter though? Like, this guy might want to fight you for real, but at the same time, how to fight. It's not like if I were to insult a fighter and then he wanted to fight me for real and I'm fucked. Like, you both know how to fight in that case.
Yeah, but it's not like one thing I learned, it's not about the fight. It's about the repercussions afterwards. It's like you might beat somebody up and then then you got to deal with all this like stuff afterwards. Not just like legal stuff. I mean, that's obvious. Like they might start the fight and then like still try to sue you afterwards, even though it started it. But also like like dealing with like their friends or like other stuff in the future. Like you don't know, like like you don't want to be having to be careful all the time. Yeah, you can just be like, I'm a tough guy, it doesn't matter. But then sometimes you're working with your family and you don't want to deal with stuff. You know what I mean? And then you disrespected and punked this dude outright. So he got a right to on site set it on you, like right away. And then you walk in there with your wife and your kids, and you're like, oh, hold on, why don't you go over there? Let me handle it. Like, why?
Oh, yeah.
Like, it don't make any sense. Not for this. Not when there's real like problems out there that you could be having with people and you're trying to avoid. I don't see the point in bringing problems like that to yourself. Just it's a whole thing of treat others how you want to be treated, kind of thing, And it's like you create that energy, and that energy is going to find its way back to you at some point. So just don't do it.
It's funny you say that because I think people always figure that because fighters are going to fight in the cage, like that's the end of it, right? Like we're going to fight anyway, so let's talk that shit. We fight, and then it's hashed out. But we've seen a few times where it's like guys are still pissed. They'll win, they'll get the knockout, and they're still pissed about it. And people are like, "Yeah, but you just fought." Like it's like you said, it goes beyond that because you don't know how people are going to take that.
I don't want to sound crazy here, but it's like it's not about the fight. It's about the satisfaction of it, Like
Yeah.
I'll give you an example. Like sometimes people get mad and then they'll like kick something or punch something and then they like whatever, and then they'll feel better or whatever it is, right? You can fight somebody like and then not get that satisfaction. Like, you might win by decision or whatever it is, and you might still feel wrong, like you didn't get it out of you, and you can hold on to something like that. Like you might not feel the effort put in or whatever it is. And I'm like, even in a real fight, you can have a real fight with somebody and then like just feel like I never got my hit or whatever it is, and still feel some kind of way. So it's not that it's about fighting in a cage or fighting in a ring and being done. Yeah, you fought, but you might not have gained that person's respect, or that person might not have gained your respect. Imagine you go fight somebody you was mad at, and then the first thing to do is kick you in the groin and begin to fight, poke you in the eye. Yeah, you might win, but you're like, man, that wasn't right. So, so it's a lot of stuff involved. any kind of violence shouldn't be entered into lightly, no matter what it is. So just I'd be careful for that.
Well, it's funny you mentioned violence. I think people that have never been in a fight, that kind of altercation, they don't realize that kind of violence, like the way it happens. Like even people like you get adrenaline, things happen
Yeah.
so fast. A lot of things happen with muscle memory, and I know fighters talk about getting in the zone and stuff. But I think people on the outside they don't realize like what true violence is until like you have a grown man in front of you trying to whoop your ass.
It's funny. It's funny you say that because that especially the muscle memory thing. That's why I think like people, like I hear stories about people like running up on fighters and doing all kinds of crazy stuff. Muscle memory is a crazy thing. Like if you think like, oh, I could punk this guy because he's he fights, but he's not a tough guy. If you scare somebody,
Yeah.
if somebody is able to be scared, they are dangerous. And like they talk about it in all kinds of different metaphors, analogies about like wounded animals or cornered animals, whatever it is. Like if you scare a human being, like you don't know what they're capable of. So stop trying to punk people. Like you know what I mean? Like especially if they know how to fight, because they might go all off on you. They might take the situation that's like a low threat level to be extreme, and then all of a sudden, like what's going on? And I've seen that happen in regular life, So it's not a good thing. It's just gotta be careful.
Speaking of which, I've spoken to a lot of fighters about like, fans watch and they think they could go out there and fight, right? Like, it's just punching someone. And a lot of
Yeah.
fighters, they mention like, if I fought someone, like fighter says, if they fought someone that hadn't trained or anything, Rofion Stotts, for example, was like, it'd be like if I was fighting a child. He was like, if I put my hands on, and Mike Rodriguez was like, you put your hands on people and you realize they offer no resistance. He's like, they are not strong. I can do whatever I want with you. Is that something you feel yourself? Like it's kind of, I'm fighting a child.
Well, you know what's crazy about that? Even at a professional level, fighting other professionals sometimes, like you'll. I mean, I do this. I'm a victim of this, but like I'm like guilty of this. I'll put somebody on a pedestal because I'll be like, oh, this guy is this, and that. He's gonna be dangerous. And then get in a fight, you're like, yo, what is this guy doing? Like you kind of think like he must be setting me up because there's no way he can be making this mistake without knowing that he's making this mistake. Like this guy is walking right into the like you see him, and you kind of have to have that confidence of like, yeah, I can land this shot because this guy doesn't realize what's happening. Same thing with I used to train when I first started training and I first started fighting professionally. I was at a school where like people walk off the street and join a school, and sometimes they would have boxing experience or a Golden Glove champion or something like that, or they would just be like a new guy and who never fought before. And one thing I realized is, firstly, people who haven't competed before, the first time that they spar, they're very, very erratic. I mean, they might seem calm, but they're throwing punches, And then it's a lot of like, trying to calm them down enough to learn, but also keeping yourself safe. People who haven't really competed don't understand like the levels to which aggression happens at like a like a professional level. For example, I had a friend. He was a young guy. He was coming up, and he was like fighting amateurs and stuff like that. He hadn't fought professional yet, and he was preparing for not a professional fight, but like a tough amateur fight. He was really in the zone. I was already a professional, and I was trying to spar with him and not like like be too crazy because you trying to like build. But one time, one time, I was training already for like 3 hours, and I was about to go home, but they asked me to spar with him, and I was like, I'll spar with you for a little bit, but then I gotta go. And he was coming at me with like this crazy aggression. So I gave him one kick, and I knew he was gonna block into the body, but to kind of let him know, like, hey, like we're not on the same level of threat here. You gotta this can escalate. Even though it feels to you right now, like this is like the craziest thing in the world, this could escalate and get much, much worse. So you gotta chill. And then in that little transfer of strikes, everything calmed down. It was a little conversation. I don't want to discourage anybody from training and getting better at martial arts and being like, oh, I can't compete with these guys, because I did that. I watch people fight on TV for years, and I'd be sitting there wishing I'd be shadowboxing in front of the TV, like watching fights. Like, yeah, man, and if he did that to me, I'll do this and that. And I'm an amateur, but whatever, like whatever. But you just got to be reasonable in the fact that if you're sparring with somebody, training with somebody, or even if you see somebody on the street or whatever it is, and competes professionally, it's got to be a little, not saying like, hey guys, and be tentative, but respectful,
But
respectful.
I assume you have a certain confidence that comes with knowing that, like, if someone were to come up to you and just shove you, like, you'd have to do like one move and you got control. Do you have extra confidence now? You walk with your shoulders extra high, knowing that like you're about that life if it were to come down to it.
Oh no, no, absolutely not. Absolutely not. Because violence is not about fists. I grew up in Bed-Stuy in the '90s. Like I I've like that. I've seen some pretty good fighters get messed up. Because it's not about it's not a fair fight. No street fight is a fair fight. There's no rules. There's no like agreed upon a situation or like this is how it's gonna be. Nah, man. I know back in the day, like people used to be like, if you threw a kick or something like that in the fight, people were, oh, you a punk, man, you kicking, and they would act a certain type of way. But at the same time, when things get crazy, people would kick, people would punch, people would bite, all kinds of crazy stuff, and you would call them a punk afterwards to some extent because they did something that was like outside of the agreed upon rules in a way. But if somebody getting their behind, well, they're gonna do whatever they got to do to win. Like they're not gonna like be like, oh, I could hit this guy with this brick, but I'm not gonna do it because it's not in the agreed upon rules. No, you never know what anybody's gonna do. You don't know at what point somebody is in their life, at what point they are in their day, like to where they just have had it, and this is their opportunity to go to go all out. Yeah. So I mean, it's definitely like a reassurance to be able to defend yourself. Of course. I mean, for like at least for the first few levels of threat, you could be like, I'm safe, but you don't know. So why why tempt fate and act crazy and wild out and then cause that bad energy? I just think it's really good to be happy and enjoy life. And I enjoy fighting a lot. Like growing up, I have friends from kindergarten that I'm still friends with. Like and we play fought, like we do all kinds of crazy like wrestling, power bombing each other, all kinds of stuff like that, and it was fun and it is fun. But that's a different kind of feeling than a street fight or something like that. So it's just it's not something that I think you should I would enter into without being cautious.
I don't know about you guys, but I know for us, when I first moved to where I am now, like I was in the 3rd grade, and the big thing was everybody had a trampoline outside, and everybody was watching, wrestling. And
Yeah.
I didn't know what that was, but it was like, if you jumped on a trampoline, you understood that somebody was going to try some kind of move, somebody's going to throw some kind of kick, and then if someone's parents found out, you get in trouble. And there was always the situation where everybody's trying stuff, and then you get hit for real, and then you guys are fighting for real on that trampoline, bouncing around like.
Well, but we didn't have that trampolines in Brooklyn. We had slap boxing. Slap boxing is the #1 way to start a real fight with somebody.
Yeah.
I've seen so many real fights because of slap boxing that like as soon as especially if it's like two guys that are like kind of volatile anyway, like you just sit back waiting, like here we go, it's happening, yo, so slap boxing, and everybody's because even though they're not really fighting, at some point it's gonna turn into a real fight. Like with the play fighting is a little different because you would hear like from the top rope, you turn around, you get kicked in the chest. Yeah, exactly. Like that happens, but I feel like it's just so jovial. You're in character almost. You're the Rock, or like you're Macho Man or somebody. So it's like whatever. And at least with my friends, hey man, you playing too rough. And like, all right, just chill, and then it would de-escalate. But slap boxing, as soon as you hear that pack, like that one clean, the next one's gonna be with a close fist. The next one, the hands gonna be close.
It's exactly what it was. In high school, it'd be like, you have two dudes that have beef. It's like, we'll just slap box. And you follow, and you were like, damn well it's going to start as slap boxing. And then somebody's getting thrown through like a toilet or something. Like you knew. And you're right. That's how it starts. Everybody's doing their little, and then somebody gets it clean and it's over. Like after that, it's like doors are flying, furniture, like whatever. Like as soon as you get hit clean, it's like, that's the pride. And then, it's like, it's like you get hit and then people all of a sudden it's like, oh, hold on, this guy just hit me. And then you knew like get your phone out or whatever, like things are going to happen.
Well, that too. And also when people have boxing gloves in their house, like especially after I started training a lot, that's when I started realizing how silly this was. Okay, so this guy got bag gloves in his house. He has bag gloves in his house, not sparring gloves, bag gloves. And he gives two people bag gloves and tell them, all right, man, you got beef here, sort it out with bag gloves. So, you know what I'm saying? Like, there's no padding really. It's just like, leather and a little bit of cloth, and they throwing hands. That is dangerous. Or my favorite one is like, oh, I only got one pair of gloves, so hey, you put on one glove, you put
I'm not left-handed. It's like, doesn't matter. Yeah.
it's crazy. But that's the thing. It's like, okay, seeing like a certain level of things outside of the ring will give you confidence. That's like, okay, you know, like this is not really a real threat. This is like it's a competition. But then on the other hand, like when you start competing and you understand how dangerous it is, like, you know, I'm not gonna be, you know, slap boxing or sparring with some dude in an apartment or in a hallway or in a stairwell because, like, you know what I mean? Because I can get hurt and then mess up my fight coming up or you know my even an amateur fight or whatever it is, or even I might get hurt and I'm able to make it to class and you
Yeah.
chill. So that's why I think martial arts, going on this whole martial arts rant, you know, but like martial arts are really important for people to try at least for a little bit, even if it's not like a you know, like a career path or whatever it is, even if it's just for exercise. If you can safely train in a place where the energy is not crazy and people aren't trying to kill you, you know, like and like and gain a respect for martial arts, I think it changes your whole life because now your whole interaction with people and confrontations are like are different, and you understand that you don't need to do certain things. Like it's not worth it. You know.
It's funny, you know, when I first started covering MMA, one of the things is, you know, people they act like if the journalist doesn't train or do anything, it's like you have no I get no credibility. So I was like, all right, so let me at least sign up for kickboxing or something. So I signed up for kickboxing, and you know, I'm excited. I'm like, you know, you get real confident for nothing. You think you're gonna turn into some kind of champion. Like I'm gonna find out I have this
Yeah.
natural athleticism I didn't know existed. And I showed up, and it was like all women, all 40-year-old soccer moms. I'm looking, and I'm like, you know, am I going to be sparring with these people? It just tell you just how I had no idea what I was doing. And then by the end of it, I'm like, this is a cardio kickboxing class for
Yeah.
stay-at-home mom. It's like, you know, what am I gonna learn in this thing? Like, you know, it was like, and I'm the only dude here. And then people are like, you know, why are you here? It's like, you know, I like MMA. It's like, nah,
Yeah.
like, yeah, it wasn't what I thought it was gonna be.
Well, I mean, you know, I don't knock those classes because sometimes you have people who like train for real and teach those classes, and they'll give you a little bit more like you know correction because they know you're in it for something else. I've taught those classes before. You know,
Yeah.
like I've had classes where like especially like a couple years ago, like when Muay Thai became popular to the masses, and you had a lot of like you know like models and like you know like people trying to like lose weight, actors coming in trying to do Muay Thai and get that like that fighter body, yeah, like that whole thing. And you would see people, you see people, you know, going hard, trying to hit the pads hard, hit the bag, and even train with each other a little too extra. And you kind of try to separate them and put them together, and then you try to take those guys and bring them to regular Muay Thai class. Like it just kind of happens that way, you know. So yeah, like even if the class isn't unless the person is just having you do weird stuff, you know, like things where you're like, okay, I don't know about this, you know, like, and you ask, and even as a person, you know, like even if you're like, I don't train that much, but I know I shouldn't be doing this, then you know, just try it out and then see if you can, see if you can like, you know, like swing from that into like a regular class if you can, you know.
You mentioned the fighter body. I'm always curious for fighters, like, do you guys work on having a certain aesthetic, or is it just the fact that you're training so much and you have to eat a certain way that you end up naturally? Because you know, people look at it like the two bodies are you're either Francis Ngannou or you're Roy Nelson. Like, there's no, you know, it's like one of them, it's like you're eating macaroni and cheese during training camp, and the other one's like you're eating whole chickens. Like,
Nah.
how does that happen?
I think I don't know. You know, I feel like my initial reaction is just like, nah, you're just training to fight. Like, you don't care how you look. But
Yeah,
then I think that actually now, you know, some people do care about it. They do want to look a certain way in the fight and like kind of give off this, you know, Adonis, you know, like feeling and aura, you know, during the fight because it's more about you know the brand of them, I guess. I don't know, like yeah, like I had somebody try to explain this to me before, and you know it just seemed like a lot of work. You know, I think most people are just training for the fight, and they're not trying to look a certain way. You know, I think it just naturally happens that way. I mean, you gotta cut weight anyway. You know,
yeah.
so it's like you trying to get your body fat percentage low enough to be able to make weight without you know going into anything crazy. So I think that's just a natural thing that happens.
Well, people, they always wanna see the bodybuilders competing, right? They're like, if these guys have this kind of physique, like, they must, and then you see them fighting, it's like they're stiff as hell, it's like the punches, like, they the shoulders are moving,
Right.
it's all over the place, like, how come these guys, it's like, because they don't have a fighter body, like, they're trying to
Mm.
just get big and, using
Yeah.
special supplements to get big, like, you see the functionality is different with the way certain guys look.
Well, I mean, a good example of that is like you got Roy Nelson is a good example, but also look at DC. Like you got these guys who like they train. They fight at a weight class where they might not be able to like get to that physique level without losing a lot of weight.
Yeah,
Or gaining too much muscle. Like it depends on their body type, like their height. Like all kinds of like bone density, all kinds of things can affect how you'll look at a certain weight. So I've seen many MMA fights where one person is looking like a physical specimen. Like the guy's great, and the other guy is kind of pudgy, and he's like whooping on this guy. It's like, and a lot of times too. I mean, I've been fighting professionally for a while, but whenever I pull an example, it's always from amateur fighting because that's when I used to like really watch people and like try to gain a sense of what's happening in the world. These guys, trying to figure out like who fighters are in a sense of trying to find myself. I started fighting when I was kind of young, so trying to find myself like in this whole situation. And sometimes people who are really like strong looking are accustomed to intimidating people.
yeah,
I remember I had a fight against a guy. I think I was like 20 or something like that, or I was a grown man, but
yeah,
this dude looked like he just came out of prison. Like he had
oh,
mad tattoos. He was diesel. I was like, yo, how am I fighting?
yeah, right.
who okayed this match? Like this guy is crazy looking, And then the fight started, and I started beating him up. I think at some point it's like it wasn't that I was just so much better than him. It was just that I wasn't scared to hit him,
Yeah.
and it changed the whole perspective of what was happening in his mind. And that's something that I realize is it even happens nowadays, that people just don't expect to be like tested or to be confronted on a certain level, and then you're able to back them down. So I think that physique, like if I have to choose, unless it's like it's some kind of crazy like amateur match. But if it's like two professionals, and like they have a record of fighting, sometimes I feel like the guy who isn't in great shape has more to prove, so he might try a little harder. So that's a possibility too.
I mean, how many times have we seen Mark Hunt go out there and people always talk about his body and his tree trunk legs,
Yeah.
and he goes out there and he's just like gadooshing guys like, that are huge,
Mm-hmm.
and then you're just like, and then every single time you're the commentator, like, it's all about the physique, it's about the skill or the power or whatever, but it's,
Mm-hmm.
if you can make it work for you, then it really doesn't matter what you look like. And Roy Nelson, for a long time, like, people were talking about his appearance, and obviously the haircut certainly didn't help, but it was like, he
Yeah.
had figured out to make it work for him.
Yeah. He definitely he definitely surprised a lot of people. Like especially when he fought some guys who again like had crazy physiques, and they didn't do so well. But then like I remember he fought DC in San Jose, and that was going to be like a big thing, And you saw these two guys who you're looking at them, you're like, oh, they're not like super, cut up and all stuff like that. But there was a skill level involved in that fight that I really enjoyed watching. I really enjoyed it. Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like everything is aesthetics. Like how good it looks. From a distance, whatever it is. But when you saw competing and stuff like that, you're looking for the skill level, and also when you become like a fan of a sport, like you start looking for little things that are beyond just what the glitz and glamour of the initial meeting up. You start looking a little deeper and seeing like a lot of what more the sport or whatever it is has to offer. So
Well, I feel like, casual fans too, they kind of look at the physiques like, Joaquin Buckley, for example, people were like, look at how ginormous this dude is. And he fights someone like Kevin Holland, who's known for being thin, and then it's like,
oh yeah.
you try to explain to people like that's not how it works. Like, you can, but and then Joe Rogan does his famous, those muscles need a lot of oxygen, and you have everyone where it's like, we heard it the first, 20 years, Joe, we get it, but it's like, people, I feel like casual fans are looking for something, and if it's like the physique, like at this point, I don't even see physiques anymore. I'm just looking at the past couple performances and things like that. And you
Yeah.
sort of look at the fighter as the individual, and it almost doesn't matter because you're looking at skill at this point.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. It's like that's like the experienced eye of like a fan that's been in it for a long time. People who competed, people who have just been watching the sport for a while. They have to understand the nuances. Another example with me. Like I remember like the first time I saw MMA, me and my grandfather watching TV, right? And on one channel it was K1, and another channel it was MMA. And we turned to MMA because the other one was on commercial. And we were watching them strike, and they were going in. I can't remember who it was. It was like, this is like, I don't know how old I was. This is a long time ago, But like, we were watching it, we were like, oh man, it's crazy. The guys are swinging. And then one guy took the other guy down, and I remember we looked at each other like, what's happening right now? Like, what's going on? These guys, like, why aren't they standing them back up? What's going on? We don't understand what's going on, and we couldn't appreciate the nuances. And then fast forward to when, and I would say I took martial arts as a kid, but all I understood was striking. So then, like a couple years later, I started learning jiu-jitsu and learning about jiu-jitsu, and it's starting to see like, oh, this guy's in guard. Let me see how he passes the guard. That's not easy. Like, oh, let me see how he does this. That's not easy. Oh, let me see how he. Oh, wow, he did it really. Wow, that's amazing. He took his back, and now you kind of start to figure out like what's going on. I really feel that like it's important for commentators to explain the position and then talk about what's happening and give the position names, because every time an MMA fight happens, I mean, like, especially like a UFC fight, you have new people watching it. People who like, the friend or, the family member in the room for the first time. And if they can get the names of the positions down, not like triangle and armbar, but I mean like, like mount, side control, these kind of things, you're creating a base for them to learn other things so that they are able to like get involved in the sport. But everybody understands a punch. You call it a jab, you call it a whatever you want. It's a punch. I know how to throw a punch. I can understand that. But jiu-jitsu and grappling is a different thing. So it needs more to be, to bring you into it.
Well, the ground game is tough for casual fans too. Like I don't know in real life, I don't know anyone that, even sort of, is like a big fan of MMA. Like every time, I want to go watch something and I invite my friends, like half of it is just sales pitching. Like, here's why we want to watch two guys where, should you be for this guy, that guy? And then I had one friend, he's like, I think boxing's boring, but I like MMA, but I hate the grappling. And it's like, and then, but the thing is, I think there's a lack of understanding. It's like, if your idea of grappling is some guy holding the other guy against the fence, I can absolutely understand that. But it's like, if you watch two high level guys go on the ground in MMA, like a great example is Gunnar Nelson and Damian Maia. If you watch these two guys, like a lot of people were like, oh, maybe we'll see shitty striking. Now we got to see some high level grappling. It's like, and that makes you appreciate what they were doing, because, and especially seeing Damian Maia do that, someone like Nelson, it's like, man, you can appreciate the grappling when you see two high level guys go at it.
Well, I mean, I remember watching, I think it was Damian Maia and Jake Shields to fight. And being super excited because I knew it was going to be some of the craziest things I've ever seen. And I remember seeing a reversal that Shields did that it just didn't even make sense. Like he rolled him over and rolled back in the middle of the. He recountered his counter on the ground. It was crazy, But I do think that it takes more of an interest to be able to enjoy that. Like, I was like a real big fan of even the MMA fighters that I liked originally, like when I first got into it, were like a little bit of a wrestler anyway. They had like a Mark Coleman, like Rampage, like got guys who they threw hands, but they would like be body slamming people and picking them up. And I used to watch WWE like a lot growing up, so I was like, well, this seems like something that I want to see. This guy he just slammed this guy out of this. It was Kimura, but I'm like, out of this like hand thing, he just slammed him. This is awesome, and that made me kind of want to see what happens afterwards, So you need to have some kind of way to find interest in it, to enjoy the grappling portion of it. I mean, because other guys, a lot of guys fight against the cage and they're actually trying to do work. But then you have people who are stalling, and that's part of their strategy. They're actually holding and trying to frustrate the person so they can make a mistake and they catch them in a good shot. Like, there's a lot of like things going on, and you can't really make that distinction if you never really watched this sport before.
Rampage is such a great example, because anyone who I've talked to like in real life where they tell me like how they got into MMA, usually Rampage is like one of those names where it's like, and then Rampage picking up people and slamming them. And it's
man.
It's like that's, like if like Rampage is a guy you go to, and I mean, and he was one of the guys that helped me get into the sport too. It was like the things he was doing, but it's been so tough watching that downfall though. I mean, it's I hate seeing that. You see these guys in their prime, they're one thing, and then they hang around too long. And Rampage, it's not like he's been getting flatlined or nothing, but it's been kind of difficult to sort of watch that.
Well, I mean, it's a different type of thing than it was before. I mean, when you see somebody body slam somebody, knock them out, you know what I mean? Like it's easy to understand. So it'll draw you in, and it's an amazing feat. It's a feat of strength. It's a feat of technical ability. Like a lot of things that are happening there. But I feel like when guys are getting older, and they are feeling different, or they have a different weight class, whatever it is, they have to be open to changing a little bit of their style. I think GSP did a good job of that. That's why he was able to stay that's successful for so long, and even now, like, I mean, like he fought Bisping, not too long ago, and he's able to change his style to fit his body and what he needs to do. It's not just about like, oh well, I throw overhand, so I'm gonna throw overhand. Like, yeah, you do throw them, but you don't throw them the same way, and not even like you lost a step or anything like that. It's just that maybe like your back is a certain type of way now, or your foot, or whatever it is, to make it to where the amount of time it takes you to throw it just change. You gotta make adjustments. And the people, not necessarily Rampage himself, but some people, they don't adapt to a certain way of fighting. Rampage is he fights like heavyweight or something right now, right? Like he's like
he's a heavyweight. He's not coming back down into 205.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. So it's a different situation, than it was before, because heavyweight doesn't really have a limit. You know what I mean? So and as you go up 10, 20 pounds, like I was earlier this year, I was like 215, and like I felt like a large individual, Like I remember I was throwing kicks on the bag, and I could just see like my legs swinging, like, Jesus, wait, this is crazy. But even though I felt the same, my performance, it wasn't, I don't want to say it was bad, but it wasn't the same situation. Certain things made me more tired. Certain things made me more, concerned during sparring than other things, because I'm bigger now, and it takes more effort. So all you have to be taken into consideration as you go through the sport, and as you change. Even if you're like a kid, like let's say like you're 19, and all of a sudden now you've been training and fighting for a little bit. Now you're 26. Like your body changed. You know what I mean? Like you might have got a growth spurt. It might be easy for you to do I don't know, like some kind of weird omoplata situation before, but now you just had a growth spurt, and it's a little harder for you. Then you got to work on triangles. I mean, who knows? You know what I'm saying? Like the things got to be taken into consideration, other than just I feel like fighting, so let me fight. Yeah?
Or Overeem, I think, is a great example of someone that, understood where his weaknesses were, and now he's adjusted. Like, he kind of reached a period where it was like, listen, if you eat a big one and it's clean, you're going out. That's just the facts. And then he adjusted his style to where now he's getting hit a lot less, and he's still finding success. He's in his 40s, and basically we understood, like, anyone in the elite, they might beat Overeem, but anyone under that, like, you're not, because, mentally he's adjusted his style so well that, and I think that's really a great example of someone that kind of figured out where his limitations were. And now we're seeing him fight, and it's like, and he's still winning these fights because, the mental game has changed for him.
Yeah, people don't. I don't want to say people don't respect the mental game, but it kind of feels like people forget that, like, the fighting stuff is not. It's not just fighting. Like you got to take something into consideration in a fight. Everything you do in a fight affects the fight. Like even if you don't do it on purpose, or whatever it is, it affects the fight. So it's something that two people are competing, and they're being perceptive of everything, because they want to make sure that they're able to capitalize when they can, or something like that. Being more experienced and relaxed, it gives off a certain type of energy. Being aggressive gives off a certain kind of energy, and I don't think anyone is more receptive to energy as a person that's not trying to get their butt whooped. You know what I mean? Like anybody in that situation is picking up a lot of things. Overeem, especially because I think now people kind of feel they could drop him. Like people get too ambitious against him, and they forget that this dude at one point was a world champion in kickboxing and MMA at the same time. Like, you know what I mean? Like this dude ain't no joke, and he has the experience, like you're saying. So he's able to put people in situations where they think they are in a powerful position, when really he's setting them up for some. You know what I mean? Like, what too? And you see some guys coming up that do it also. They're like they're not having been fighting as long, but they're able to kind of either rope it up a little bit or stay calm in a pocket. But and a guy like Overeem, someone so like skillful and like who has so much experience, is able to do it in a way where the person is always feels like one more hit is gonna win him the fight. Even when like 10 years ago, whatever it is, like he would do that to people, and he would drop them. You know what I mean? He would drop them, and I think that that's something that really has to be taken into consideration when you think about guys who've been around for a long period of time. Yeah.
One thing I am curious about, sort of just change subjects a little bit, but I want to know a little bit about your relationship with the media. Like, obviously I am part of the media, and my thing is doing the pre-fight, post-fight interviews, 10, 15 minutes, but you can't dive
Mhm.
into like certain subjects. You know what I mean? Like, you really
Mhm.
stick with, we're either talking about the fight you're going into, we're talking about the fight you just got off of,
Yeah,
and I
yeah,
know
yeah.
fighters always hear the same questions every time. Like, you always hear it's like, how many times are you gonna ask me about this damn matchup? But I feel like you're someone like you'd have a pretty good relationship with the media. I mean, what's your relationship like, behind the scenes?
I mean, it's fine, I guess. I don't know, like I mean, I don't know how people perceive me, but like at least for me, like it doesn't bother me to answer questions because first of all, like I want to do this for a long time, dude. Like I've been fighting since like 2004 or five. Like, it's been a long time. So my first introduction, like I was saying, was watching these guys win fights on in Pride FC and give interviews, see people in K1 have the gold flakes raining for and then talking to the translator and like all this cool stuff. So I love doing interviews, to be honest. Like like even it's gonna sound crazy, but even before like I got in the UFC and stuff like that, I would practice talking on the mic and all kind of craziness just because it was like a fun thing. I think even when I was a kid, I would like I would say certain things. It just like a certain kind of feeling, And I think it all goes together. But because I don't really have too much to like, I don't want to talk about, then
Yeah.
I feel like I just talk about anything. I mean, if somebody asks me a question that I don't feel comfortable answering, the first question I ask myself is, why don't I want to answer that question? And then usually while I'm asking myself that question, I'm already talking about it. So like it don't matter. Yeah.
Well, I feel like the big thing we see is that, some media members make it a point to sort of cover the prospects, and then when they get to the
Mhm.
UFC, like you see them, they're doing the same interviews with the same guys because they were there from the start. Did you feel like you got a lot of coverage? Like a lot of people were talking to you when you were a prospect that continued once you got to the UFC?
Oh yeah, I mean, for sure, because I, it is, I mean, a transition period, but I don't think it's with the media. You get more coverage going into UFC. Of course, everybody's watching you to see what you're gonna do, and I think the main thing they're watching to see is, are you gonna be able to survive in here? Because it is a different level of competition. I felt like when I got to UFC, like I turned pro again. Like it was like a whole new level of competition, but it wasn't for what I thought it was. It was more that like I had to have more confidence in myself because I put it on a pedestal so long that like, hey man, you belong here. Like, just do what you gotta do. Like these guys, you're fighting. Like you could beat them, but you kind of maybe not everybody, but I was kind of feeling like this guy is a genius. So I gotta be careful to not like put myself in a situation like I'm playing chess or something, like that where I can't get out of, and then I have to fight my way out of it the rest of the fight. But then you start realizing after a while, I was like, hey, these guys are good and you're good too. You know what I mean? So and then you start being like, yeah, I think I'll fight better than this guy. So and then you start going into that kind of confidence. If you don't allow yourself to do that, I think. Oh, I won't say anything. I mean, I think everything's relative, I guess. But like if you don't have confidence in yourself to be able to compete with people around you, then those people are going to use you as a stepping stone to bring themselves higher. Yeah. So that's something that I feel like yeah, I had to really get under control to be able to compete in the UFC. And as far as with the media goes, when people see you competing and like training hard and doing your best, I think they're gonna they're gonna talk to you and make sure that you're, I guess, I should say make sure, but they want to see what's driving you to some extent, and that's where it is with me. I think when people talk to me about stuff, they want to see like what's driving me to keep going, as opposed to just like just what I'm going to do next. I guess I don't know. Could be wrong.
Do you? I mean, I know there's some fighters that hate doing media. Like I talked to Curtis Blades, and the big thing is he was like, I'm not doing podcasts anymore because sometimes like two fans that are like super casual asking you, and he was like, stupid questions like, am I from Chicago and stuff. He's like, look it up. Don't bring me on the podcast to ask me. Do you have anyone like that where like if they shot you a text message like, hey man, could you do an interview? You'd spend maybe 10, 15 minutes going, I don't know, if I want to. You have anybody like that?
No, and it's not, honestly, the question I asked myself when you asked me that question, the question I asked myself was, if I did, would I say so? Wouldn't that be kind of mean?
I
be
mean,
like,
that's
be like,
about
yeah,
honesty.
this is one guy I don't like. I'll get no, I don't. I think it's important to understand like the person's job. I'm not talking about like you, especially not right now, because we have a conversation. But this
Yeah.
person is an ambassador for this sport to people who don't watch it, as well as people who do watch it. So sometimes somebody asks me like, oh, are you from so and so, or if what do you like, whatever. It's like, yeah, I asked that question before, but everybody that watches the last platform and I watch this platform, and same thing with this platform and I watched the last one. You're kind of talking to new people all the time. So I don't feel any kind of way to answer that question. If it's like a really personal question that like it's hard for me to talk about, then I would feel some kind of way like on a contender show, and it's crazy. My aunt passed away years ago, and I've never spoken to anybody about it. Like I'm talking about, even in my family, I haven't even talked about it with them, and even my wife to some extent. Like I, and then when I got a contender show, after I won the fight, they asked me something about my aunt, and dude, like
Yeah.
I felt like I got punched from the inside. I was like, what's going on right now?
What?
And but it wasn't like I was upset. I was just like, oh snap, like I'm about to cry on TV. You know what I mean? Like I'm about to like trying to hold it back. So certain things like that, I can understand. If somebody had like a real troubling situation or something that's hard for them to talk about, they kept getting asked about it. It does take a physical toll on you. It's not a matter of just like being willing to talk about it. It can like be hard to speak on. And I think I made a post about my aunt, and I tried to be more like open about it. And I talked to my family, talked to my aunt. I used that situation to be more open and talk to people around me, so that I'll be able to speak on it, like in a different way. And now I feel fine. Like now I can bring it up in a conversation without feeling crazy. But other than that, like I don't really see any problem in answering any question.
Well, that's the thing that ESPN we've seen recently is that they like to do this thing where they find like the one gut wrenching thing. Like I think it was, I don't really watch football, but during the NFL draft, I think they were finding like a personal story for everyone. It was like, the guy gets drafted and the stats are like, he's playing this, he's doing that. Oh, and by the way, his mom's a crackhead and he had to overcome that. It was like they were looking for everything. Like everyone, it was like, he had a dog die when he was 7. It's like, what are you guys like? Why are you looking for this? And I feel like ESPN, they kind of did that with you guys in the Contender Series too. They would find like Tracy Cortez. How many times they ask her about her brother? I feel like there's this big thing where they want to bring out an emotional thing of you, and sometimes it's appropriate, and sometimes I feel like it's, at what point are you kind of disrespecting people's personal life? You know what I mean? I feel like some things are fair game when like stuff
Yeah.
happens in the fight, but other things, it's like, are you trying too hard to find the emotional angle when in reality, like you mentioned, it's a gut punch, and today you can talk about it. But at the time, you're probably thinking like, is this really the time and place to ask me about that?
No, at the time, like I know, especially if you watch that interview, you'll hear me speaking under my breath,
Yeah,
like about it, and it's nothing rude. It's just like like, oh, you asked me that question. I'm a little surprised.
yeah,
I feel as though certain things are out of like if something happened like man like tragically recently, and the person hasn't been able to talk about it, they have to ask the person beforehand. Like, I mean, they asked me about
yeah,
my aunt before. That's how they knew to ask the question. So I spoke about it before, but when I was talking about it after the fight, it's not that I forgot about what happened. It's just that like I was thinking about it at the time, and it was a little crazy, but I was glad to be able to go through it, to be able to, for myself, to, to speak about it, and also let people know about my aunt, man. She was amazing. Like, so I got to talk about it. But then at the same time, if something about someone's parents, like, having drug abuse or any kind of substance abuse, you gotta be careful. If the person hasn't like spoken about that before, then you want to be careful, because sometimes people, you gotta think about that person, who you're talking about, especially if the person's still alive, and like they're at a job,
yeah,
working as a manager somewhere or something like that. And then
right,
they're like,
yeah,
yeah, man, look, man, my baby's on TV. Yeah, I heard your dad used to be crack.
yeah. What?
Everybody in the
Yeah,
office looking at him like, hey, John, you were on crack? Like,
yeah,
like, what happened?
exactly.
Like you didn't mention that in your in your interview.
Right, yeah,
Yeah. So that's the only thing I can say to be careful about. But it's everybody has different levels of comfortability when they're talking about things. And like I think to some extent, as a person in like like entertainment, you have to be willing to be a little more open than normal, because people do connect with you. I've had people, comment or send me messages after fights talking about things. People I don't know. Like, I don't,
Yeah.
but they'll say stuff like, yeah, I had this happen and that, and I'm like, yeah, like I feel you, and I'm glad that me saying something was able to like get you to feel something too, and kind of put you at ease, because one thing I found out a lot more, and I wish I knew this when I was a kid, but like there are a lot more people that are like you than you think.
Yeah.
A lot more people, like that. So sometimes when you speak about something, it resonates with people, and it calms them in a way that you wouldn't expect. So that's why, for me, I just say whatever. You ask me a question, I'm like, I'll talk about it, and to try to be respectful as I can.
And so you've been, how long have you been in quarantine? I assume it's got to come to an end soon, right? Otherwise, it must feel like it's been forever.
Yeah, I think it's been man, it's been like it's been 16 days I've been in here. Nah, like it actually been like about like 16, 17 days. I know it's supposed to be like a 10-day period and a 14-day period, but I'm trying to be careful, because like one thing that would hurt my feelings is like to go train, or and get my coach somebody sick, or some craziness like that. So I'm just being careful. I'm training and staying in shape, checking make sure that I'm able to do certain things that I kind of warrant as like not an amazing feat, but like, okay, I can do this many push-ups, I can do this many like burpees or jump squats or sprints or whatever it is, just to make sure, hey, I'm in shape for sure, because last time I couldn't do this and this, but this time, so I'm just keeping myself ready, so I can try to get back in there.
So did you have symptoms, or did you get lucky and were you asymptomatic?
I was asymptomatic for like most of it, and then like I thought I was having something for one day, where I was like, oh, I feel kind of weird, and I just ended up sleeping a lot. I had a lot of, I think fatigue is a symptom. Like I slept a lot, and then I felt better afterwards. So now like I'm great.
So you can taste, you can smell, all that good stuff.
Yeah, I can do all that. Like but it's really a weird thing, because when you hear about the symptoms on TV, and when you like just read about whatever it is, they make it seem like it's something like so dramatic that you'll notice right away. Like
Yeah.
I did not notice it right away. Like like I didn't notice my taste just suddenly disappears one day. No, you notice it gradually, and even at the height of it, you can still taste and smell a little. But I don't know about everybody, but at least for me. So sometimes when people say, oh, I don't think I got it, I can still smell. Like, yeah, be careful, because if you're asking yourself that question, and your nose isn't stuffed up or anything, like you don't have like a bunch of snot in your nose, and then you might have to be careful. So like people have to be aware of the symptoms they have, and be careful not to like run around and get people sick, because like I'm an athlete, obviously, like I've been training for a fight, but I still felt crazy, like like I need to calm down and be careful at some point. I was retired and all some of that, and I'm pretty sure my body's used to getting beat up, so somebody who doesn't train, or who not train like martial arts, but just people who you're not in shape that well,
Yeah.
you don't want to mess around and get sick. If you don't have to, man, take precautions. Yeah.
Do you have anything that you can sort of point to and be like, when I got it, it was probably from this? Like, is there a moment where you're like, maybe I wasn't being careful or anything like that? Or is it just one of those things where you think like, man, I did everything and I still got it?
Yeah, I think I did everything I possibly could, because like I don't go out much anyway.
Yeah.
Like like even before quarantine, like I would go to the gym, I would go home, I'll go to like like buy video games, something like that. Like but or like a comic convention. Like these are the things that happen like annually, or like like something that I would go to as a big event. But I don't just randomly go out to places.
Yeah.
So now especially, like I will go to the store, and then like my wife will want to make sure she goes in the store instead of me if I have a fight coming up, just to keep me from potentially getting sick right before I leave. All kinds of stuff like that. So you can be very careful. I took a test waiting for the results still. Recently, and the lady was telling me like a lot of people get sick because they don't wash up to their wrists. They just kind of do like their fingertips and the palms, and you gotta change your mask, all that stuff. So who knows what could happen? Like I felt, especially during quarantine, I was like, yo, don't think about where you could have got it, because you are just gonna make yourself very angry for no reason.
Right.
You know what I mean? Just chill out and try to focus on getting better.
For sure. I saw that the UFC was getting a lot of criticism. There's certain media members where their gig is sort of, find everything the UFC is doing wrong and then put it out there. And I feel like everyone was doing this big thing where it's like, look at everybody pulling out of fights and stuff like that. Like, but it's one of these things that's like it's happening to everyone. Even me for a long time was like, oh, I don't know anyone with COVID. All of a sudden, it's like, my best friend's girlfriend has it. This coworker has it, and it's like, it's coming. It feels like it's coming for you.
Well, the thing about it is, and like, again, I don't want to seem like I'm pandering here like a UFC, like I'm so grateful. No, but seriously, like keeping it real though, like this is our job. You know what I mean? Like especially for me now. I've been fighting for a long time. I've been fighting for a time where there's no way I could pay bills fighting. Like I didn't like in amateur scene and coming up. You don't get paid in amateur scene, but like I mean, like coming up in early professional. I don't think anybody, at least that I know, and definitely not me, was getting paid enough to make it a full-time job. You're a professional, but you still have a day job. You're still like working like 40 hours a week, sometimes 80 hours a week, because you fight like once every like couple months, and that all that fight does is make it so that you can pay for all the times you missed work to go train. You know what I'm saying? So it's like you just living like normal. And now, by the grace of God, I'm getting paid enough to where I can focus on training. And I don't, and that gives me an extra boost to be able to, to fight. But, at the same time now, if you have a family or, or even if you're just married or whatever it is, you have people dependent on you to make sure that you can take care of things. And if it's not for these fights, you should have been like, yo, we're not going to have fights for the whole year. Like, a lot of people be in bad situations. I mean, and also you wouldn't have like, guys like Joaquin Buckley and who come up and this is their first year fighting in the UFC, and they did amazing. We wouldn't have that knockout of the year, all that stuff like that. We wouldn't have all those things if they didn't try. And honestly, because you see the rate of COVID is going up, a lot of people would have caught it anyway. Like they would have caught it like saying that, like me, if I wasn't fighting, there's no guarantee that I still wouldn't have caught it. Like I've been careful as I possibly could, and it still happened. So it's something that must have been outside of my scope of knowledge, or that I couldn't predict that happened. And I feel as though some training for a fight will keep you disciplined and keep you in a state of mind to where you're not going to go out and risk a lot of things. A lot of things that I wanted to do, during this year, I moved to a new place. Like I wanted to see I want to go to the beach and like, go hiking with my wife and like see stuff. And you can say, well, that's stuff you can do by yourself. Now you're still around a lot of people because the trails are packed, sometimes in the beach or just being around the area that I didn't do because I didn't want to risk getting sick and not being able to fight. This thing that happened, this fight getting canceled, is like my nightmare of the year. You know what I mean? Like it's like what I tried to avoid the entire year because I did not want a situation to happen where I wouldn't be able to fight. And then imagine that was the case for everybody, where everybody couldn't fight this year because they didn't want to take the risk. Like if you're willing to fight, you're going to do it. This is a sport where people are very passionate about what they're doing, and you have to be able to compete in this. And if you fought this year, you know what I mean? Like you probably really love what you're doing, and and guys like Kevin Holland, you see the guy fighting all the time. Like you think I mean, I don't know him personally, but I would imagine he's concerned about like not trying to get sick and get other people sick and something like that, and he has it on his mind, and he's still going out there and competing. So he obviously loves what he's doing. He's not like locking himself in a room and trying to just stay away from everybody. So, I mean, you got to feel inspired by that to go out there and compete as well. And I'm just happy to have the opportunity to be able to, one, fight, and improv for my family. But on top of that, I have this opportunity to compete against the best guys in the world, especially now. I could get a fight against somebody who is really, really well known because maybe somebody, like, he can't get another fight in any other way. Nobody else wants to fight. And then here I come and have this opportunity. I think is like shouldn't be overlooked. Fight somebody great, So I'm happy for all the opportunities that came, and that they're still putting on fights too.
Before I let you go, because it's been about an hour though. People are gonna ask us a million times if they haven't already. But do you have an idea when we're gonna see you again? Like, is there some kind of timelines? I know it's got to be tough with quarantine and everything, but I assume you want to try to get back out there.
Yeah, I'm trying to get on the the first fight I can get back on. Like it's a weird time because it's about to be the end of the year, so you gotta see what's happening. Like when they're gonna have fights available, like when they're gonna have cards, and trying to get back on, and then other people who miss fights are trying to get back on fights. So I mean, I'm trying to fight in January, February, and the reason is because those are the next coming months. Those are
Yeah,
the closest months. Like I'm trying
yeah,
to fight as soon as possible. So that's all. That's all I can do. I really had to like calm down during the quarantine and stop like trying to train and stop trying to like at least for a week. I told myself I gotta give myself a couple of days to relax because in my mind, like every day wasted is a day gone. It's like, all right, well now I can't train. I didn't train yesterday. But you gotta get back to a point where your body can handle training and then train. And I feel like I'm back at that point now, to where I can train and also that I can fight. Like I asked myself during the situation, when I first heard about it, whatever it is, I was like, if I had to fight right now, how how many rounds could I do? And at one point I was like, I could do about 3 minutes. Like 3 minutes and then it's done. Then I was like, oh, I could do like five. I could do about 2 rounds. I could do about, and now I could do like 3-4 rounds right now. And before like I feel like I'm tired, and that's normal. That's like me getting back to like what's called when I say I could do 5 rounds. Now I'm ready to fight. Like now. So I gotta train a little bit to get myself back to that space. And then I'll be ready to fight, and that can be anytime.
All right. Well, listen, man. This has been great. There's so much good stuff. I hope the people watching enjoyed it too, because I know I did. Before we do let you go, though, man, you have social media. I'm sure you have sponsors and stuff. Is there anything you want to plug? Anything you want to shout out? Now's the time.
Oh, thank you. I really want to shout out my team, Alliance over here in San Diego. That you guys have got me ready for 2 fights now. And this one I felt even better than the last one. So I got shout out everybody on the team, all the coaches and my teammates and friends over there. Sponsors, GFY. They've been a sponsor of mine since I got to California, and they've been helping me out so much. So I'm grateful to them as well. Social media, Dwight Grant MMA on Instagram. Dwight Grant on Twitter, and also I actually have a video game blog, jrpgamers.com. Talk about 90s JRPGs and a bunch of stuff like that. And I guess that's it. That's what.
That's everything. Well, listen, thanks so much for the time, man. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, man. Anytime. It's always fun talking to you, man. So anytime I'm here.
Of course.